my name is Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. If you like sewing and upcycling videos, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I am back with another Upcycle by Little Toe where I take old forgotten items and give them a new life. I'm gonna be making a birthday gift for a friend, so in today's video, I'm gonna show you how I turned this dated maxi dress into this fun little mini dress, so let's get started. This dress was half off at the thrift store and I bought it for $3. It's a pretty basic sleeveless maxi dress, but I fell in love with this dainty floral print. Here is a close-up of the print, and anyone who knows me knows that I can't resist a floral print. This is my friend Emily, and we met performing together on the national tour of Miss Saigon. She is one of my favorite people, and her birthday is coming up, so I want to make her a dress. The plan is to make her a midi-length dress, and we are pretty similar in size, but I still want to add some elements to this dress that are adjustable. I'm going to be using this pattern for this crop top that I made a couple of videos ago, and I'm going to show you exactly how I modify it for this upcycle. And I do have it available for free, so if you haven't seen that video yet, I'm going to make sure to link it down below. I'm going to start by cutting out the pieces I'll need for the skirt because it's going to take up the most material, so I want to make sure that I have enough. I'm making a midi skirt with a slit, so here are the 3 pieces I cut out for the front. I'll sew these pieces together here, but I'll only sew from here to the waist, creating a slit along the left leg. Here are the 2 pieces I cut out for the back of the dress, and I'll sew them together along the center back seam. Using this pattern that I drafted, I'll cut out my bodice pieces. This is so embarrassing because I literally just started this project and I've already made a huge mistake. So I went ahead and started cutting out the fabric for my bodice, and I forgot to modify the pattern first. So now all of my bodice pieces are too short for this dress. And I've spent the last 30 minutes trying to figure out how to salvage this. And I was thinking maybe I could add a waistband to make the bodice a little longer, but I think I'm going to have to scrap my original idea, and I'm going to turn this dress into a mini dress and use the fabric that I saved for the skirt earlier to cut out my new bodice pieces, which is very annoying, but also the beauty of upcycling. Okay, take 2, and here is the original pattern and here is my modified one. You can see here that I've added about 2 inches in length to the pattern. Using this new pattern, I went ahead and cut out my fabric, and you can see here that it was cut on fold. Now I'm gonna go ahead and sew on the darts, and this is what the front bodice piece should look like. Here are my back bodice pieces, which I've also added additional length to so that it matches my front piece. I'll place my pieces right side spacing, and then I'll sew this side seam together, but for this side, I'll only sew to this point, leaving the rest open for the zipper. Here it is sewn together, and you can see that the left side seam is only partially sewn. Moving on to the straps, I cut out this long strip that is about 1.5 inches wide. I'm folding it lengthways, right side spacing, and I'll sew together all the way across. Here it is sewn together, and I've also gone ahead and trimmed the seam allowance. Someone commented on one of my older videos saying I should try using a loop turner to turn the straps to the right side, and I have used a loop turner before and I didn't really like it, but this material is really slippery, so I think it's actually going to work really well. If you don't know what it is, this is a loop turner, and I'm just feeding it through the strap and then hooking it to the end of the fabric here, which enables me to slowly turn the strap to the right side. The beginning bit is always a little tricky, but once I got it started, it went pretty quickly. Here is the first strap, and I ended up making another long one and 2 short ones. Next is to sew these onto the bodice, and I'm placing the long straps on the right side of the bodice and sewing them in place here. I use the shorter one to make a loop, and I'll sew this in the back piece here and do the same for the other side. If you saw my crop top tutorial, I sewed loops all along the back to create a lace-up closure, but for this dress, I'm only going to sew the loops on the top of either side of the back, which will create more of an open back feel. Here are the straps and loops sewn onto my bodice, and using the same pattern as before, I also made a lining piece which I'm placing onto my shell right side spacing. I'll sew together from this point, working my way all the way around the top to this point. I've turned the bodice over to the right side, and you should have something that looks like this. Now I'm going to sew the lining to the seam allowance all the way around, which will prevent the lining from peeking through when the garment is worn. Here is a close-up of the strap as well as the loop sewn on, and you can see that the inside of the bodice is nice and neat with no raw edges showing. For the skirt, the new plan is to make a mini skirt with a ruffled hem, and because I had to use the original back skirt piece to cut out my new bodice piece, I had to cut out all new pieces, but I'll show you exactly what I did. Here are the pieces I cut for the front of my skirt, and here it is sewn together. These are the pieces for the back of my skirt, and here it is sewn together. If you've seen any of my other videos, you won't be surprised by this, but I went ahead and finished all of the seams that join my skirt pieces so that not a single raw edge is exposed and everything looks so nice and neat. I'm placing my skirt pieces right side spacing and sewing this side seam together, but on this side I'll only sew from this point to the hem, leaving the rest open for the zipper. I've also ironed on some interfacing for some added stability. Here is the skirt sewn together, again with this section left open for the zipper. Next is to sew the skirt to the bodice, making sure that I only sew the skirt to the shell layer of the bodice. I've gone ahead and sewed my bodice to my skirt, and normally I would press the seam allowance up towards the bodice, but I had to do something a little different for this dress, and hopefully it's not too confusing, but I'm gonna try my best to show you what I mean. This is the front of the dress. This is the skirt, and this is the bodice. This is the seam that joins them together, and you can see here that I've pressed the seam allowance of both the skirt and the bodice up towards the bodice, and I'll cover the raw edges later with the lining. This is the side seam of the dress, and this is the front, and this is the back. Again, the seam allowance on the front is pressed up towards the bodice, but for the back, I've pressed the seam allowance open. Since this dress has an open back, this was the only way I could figure out how to finish this section of the back waistband. I also covered the raw edges of the seam allowance with bias tape so that everything looks nice and neat. Now that the skirt and bodice are sewn together, it's time to close up this opening by inserting the invisible zipper, and this is what it should look like sewn on. Next is to sew on the ruffled hem. Using the leftover fabric, I cut out these pieces. I'll sew them all together, creating this loop. I don't have the exact measurements for this, but you want to make sure that the loop is about double the length of the skirt hem. I've also gone ahead and hemmed this by folding over twice and sewing. Next, I'll sew a basting stitch all the way around so I can create these gathers. I used a ton of pins to ensure that everything was pinned neatly and evenly, and here is what the dress should look like now. Next is to finish the back waistband, and like I mentioned earlier, this section of my seam allowance is pressed down and now also from here to here, creating a channel. I have my dress turned inside out, and now that the channel is sewn, I can insert my elastic with the help of a safety pin. I'm just feeding it through the channel, and before I continue, I pin this end in place and then continue feeding the elastic through to the other side, pinning the other end in place and then removing the safety pin. Next step is to sew the elastic in place, and here is what the dress should look like now. For the straps, I just crisscrossed them and then tied them in a bow. I also wanted to show you that I hand sewed the lining to hide any raw edges, and I covered the seam allowance for the ruffled hem as well as the zipper in bias tape for an extra clean finish, and of course I had to sew in my label. Here's me trying it on just to make sure that everything fits nicely, and then I met up with Emily for a lovely birthday dinner and to give her the dress, and here is what the dress looks like on her. Doesn't she look so stunning? I've never been great with words, so I'm just so grateful that I'm able to express my appreciation for the people I care about through my garments. Happy birthday, Emily! I hope you all enjoyed this video. I'm going to be posting more photos of this dress on my Instagram, so make sure you're following me there and tag me if you give this tutorial a try. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this upcycle, and as always, thank you so much for watching.